What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Dana White shuts down UFC rumor. After an action-packed weekend of fights in Anaheim, California, some big news surfaced this week indicating that former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya would be facing off with Khamzat Chimaev in Saudi Arabia this summer. The news, accompanied by a screenshot of a website advertising the fight, circulated the MMA community after being reported by Yahoo, until Dana White caught wind of the news. In a post on Instagram, White refuted the report, indicating that the news of the fight taking place in Saudi Arabia was fake. He wrote, "Not happening. It was a fake post. All the MMA media that ran with it are the problem. Absolute clowns." In a separate post, White doubled down, writing, "If you hear it from the MMA media and not us, it's probably bullshit." Of course, as many fans were quick to point out, as we've seen in the past several weeks, even when the UFC announces fights, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are signed on both sides. As Kareem Zidane indicated as part of his continued coverage of the situation, Khamzat Chimaev isn't actually allowed to enter the US because of sanctions against Chechen dictator Ramzan Kadyrov, with whom he has close ties. This could explain why Chimaev hasn't had a fight booked in quite some time, given that if he's unable to enter the United States, the UFC will have to continue to book him for fights internationally in places like Abu Dhabi. Next up, let's take a look at Jamal Hill reveals shocking news on UFC 300 fight. After UFC 298, Dana White took to social media to announce that the UFC 300 event would be headlined by light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira and former champion Jamal Hill. The news caught many by surprise, given that previous reports had suggested Leon Edwards would likely headline the event, although Dana White indicated backstage after UFC 298 that Edwards was offered 3 fights, all of which he accepted, and it'll be the Glory Hall of Famer in the marquee spot. According to former light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill, the main event bout between he and Pereira came together at the 11th hour. Speaking with Aaron Bronstetter, Hill opened up on the situation.
I mean, everybody wants to wanted to headline 300. Everybody wants to be on 300, but realistically, it didn't really come on my radar to really happen until yesterday. I'm not even gonna lie, yesterday when he called me and he let me know the situation. Well, basically the situation was they needed a main event. They had some things lined up, but they would have preferred to be me and Alex. You know, it was the first option. Is what they really wanted. The people definitely wanted. That's what they've been asking me about for months now, all week and things like that. So, yeah, it made sense.
With Hill set to make his big return after tearing his Achilles, the MMA community seems split in regards to how things would play out given how quick of a turnaround UFC 300 is. Next up, let's take a look at UFC fight updates. As we look ahead at the UFC scheduled for the next several months, let's take a look at some UFC fight updates that flew under the radar, starting with a cancellation for the UFC Fight Night Atlantic City card in March. According to a report from Nolan King, a fight between Alonzo Menefield and Carlos Ulberg has been canceled and rescheduled. So far, no word as to what caused the cancellation. However, the pair will now look to mix things up on May 11th. With that fight being moved to May, reports have also indicated that the UFC has added a fight between Nate Landwehr and Pat Sabatini to the UFC Fight Night Atlantic City card on March 30th. The bout will see Landwehr look to bounce back from a loss to Dan Ige back in June, which snapped a 3-fight win streak, while Sabatini will look to bounce back from a loss to Diego Lopez at UFC 295. Last but certainly not least in the way of UFC fight updates, an announcement has indicated that Sneeko and Merab Dvalishvili will be linking up for a live stream on Rumble on February 21st, following Sneeko's controversial sparring session with Sean Strickland at the UFC PI recently. Next, let's take a look at Shavkat Rakhmonov breaks silence on UFC 300 rumors after Dana White's UFC 298 post-fight press conference, where he revealed 3 fights were offered to Leon Edwards for UFC 300. Reports indicated that one of the 3 fights offered to the champ was a bout with Shavkat Rakhmonov. This surprised many fans, given that following the Nomad's win over Stephen Thompson back in December, the assumption was that he would need one more fight before punching his ticket to a title shot, considering Bilal Muhammad's impressive win streak. While Edwards reportedly accepted all 3 opponents offered to him, Rakhmonov's manager indicated in an interview with Ringside 24 this week that the Nomad didn't refuse a fight with the welterweight champ, and no fight was officially offered to him. We don't know who exactly was offered to Leon Edwards as a rival. I can only say that we did not refuse such an offer, since we, in principle, did not receive such an offer. Therefore, it cannot be said that Shavkat refused this fight, since there was no official proposal. At the moment, Shavkat is still recovering from his injury, and for now, we cannot know the exact date of his return to the octagon. Of course, with Edwards still without a fight, the big question is whether the Nomad or Belal Muhammad will get the next crack at the welterweight title. Following Muhammad's most recent win, the expectation was that he would be next in line for a crack at the belt. However, given the latest reports that Edwards was offered a fight with Rakhmonov, it sounds as though things are still up in the air regarding the welterweight title picture. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at Fighter reveals the truth on Conor McGregor's next fight. The ongoing saga surrounding Conor McGregor's return to action has continued to leave both fans and his peers scratching their heads. For months now, McGregor has maintained that he wants to return to action, even going so far as to announce a June date between he and Chandler on New Year's. However, despite that, nothing has come to fruition. While Ariel Helwani has suggested that the UFC is keeping McGregor on ice because he only has 2 fights left on his contract, Dana White has suggested that McGregor is holding things up and is not motivated to return because of how much money he has. During a recent episode of The Fighter vs. the Writer, longtime veteran Matt Brown weighed in on the situation.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? I don't think it's some mystical and Nostradamus shit, bro. The dude's got hundreds of millions in the bank. Like, would you fight if you had hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank? I mean, like I said, that was. He did a lot of great things. He was an amazing fighter. He's not getting back to a title ever. The only reason he would have to come back would be his ego. He doesn't need the money. It'd be only ego. He's not going to get a belt again, and he knows that. So what's the point in coming back and fighting? What is the point?
Despite plenty of questions surrounding the fight, Michael Chandler recently went on WWE's Monday Night Raw, where he cut a promo calling out McGregor.
What's up, Anaheim? Hey, you are now in the presence of the most entertaining UFC fighter on the planet. Hey, now there's a man from Ireland that's been making me wait for way too long, and I still got one dude on my mind. Conor McGregor! Get your kids back to the octagon! We got some unfinished business, boys!
With plenty of uncertainty surrounding the fight, it'll be interesting to see whether the fight will take place in the fall, or if the day is pushed back once again. Next, let's take a look at, will Ian Garry fight Colby Covington next? After Ian Garry's victory over Jeff Neal at UFC 298, the undefeated contender called out Colby Covington for a scrap following a number of shots thrown his way by the former interim welterweight champion leading up to the bout. After the call-out in his post-fight Octagon interview, Garry then took aim at Covington during the post-fight press conference, further building up the hype surrounding the potential fight. In the wake of the call-out, ESPN's Brett Okamoto weighed in on the call-out and the potential fight, sharing his thoughts on the situation while speaking on SiriusXM's Fight Nation.
Yeah, I think it. I don't think it necessarily does either. He's already been kind of like on a good rise, obviously comparable to some other people at his stage in his career. He's getting a lot of attention. He has looked really, really good. Even though it was a split decision like you, I thought he clearly won the fight. And he, Jeff Neal's good. Jeff Neal has had kind of some ups and downs and some health problems, but beating Jeff Neal does mean something. So I think he'll get the Colby Covington fight if Colby Covington takes it. I just don't, Colby definitely has shown the willingness to kind of like sit back and pick his fights or hold out for the fights that he wants. I don't know if Machado Garry is the fight that he wants. I think it's interesting though, because if he gets that fight, we all know that Colby's going to go after him in the media, and I think we know the topics that Colby is going to pick. And maybe I'm reading this entirely wrong, but I don't think Machado Garry really loves being the guy that he's turning into in terms of like a guy who gets booed all the time.
As Okamoto indicated, he believes Garry is handling the reception from fans well. However, the big question is whether Covington will accept the bout, despite calling out Stephen Thompson following his loss to Leon Edwards. The former interim champ did indicate that if the UFC decides a bout between he and Garry is the fight they want to make, he's willing to accept. Next, let's take a look at Sean Strickland and Colby Covington in the WWE. When Endeavor acquired the WWE, it was made clear that fans shouldn't expect to see UFC stars crossing over and becoming WWE stars in their spare time. Despite that, the outspoken and controversial nature of both Sean Strickland and Colby Covington would make for a perfect fit in the WWE, according to WWE legend Stone Cold Steve Austin. While speaking with ESPN's Mark Raimondi, the WWE legend named Strickland and Covington as the two UFC fighters he'd like to see enter the WWE world.
If I'm going right now, I'm going Sean Strickland. And I like Sean Strickland. Boy, he stays economic in the ring right now, in the octagon, but what a promo. And so then I go Colby Covington. All the trash talk, all the athletic ability. Guy never runs out of gas. He's always in shape. He talks a mean streak and he can back it up. He's very exciting. He has that X factor that you always look for. He's double tough.
While neither fighter has indicated that they have plans to pursue a career in the WWE, other fighters, such as Ronda Rousey and Cain Velasquez, have both successfully crossed over after walking away from the octagon. Given that and Endeavor's acquisition of the WWE, the door certainly could be open if Strickland or Covington decided to pursue pro wrestling down the line. The MMA community calls out Khamzat Chimaev for being banned from the USA. According to reports, Khamzat has allegedly been banned from the USA for his connections with a Chechen warlord. This is what the community had to say. Why does Ariel say it's speculation on why he can't get in the US? Seems pretty obvious it's this connection holding things up. Any company with a shred of decency would not do business with anyone connected to Kadyrov. The UFC is putting potential earnings over human rights. Any thoughts on Islam Makhachev? Hasn't fought in the US since 2/26/2022. Always wondered if it was visa related. He's getting bankrolled by a warlord for being a mercenary. Easy to see why he won't be at any US UFC events. Everyone with a functional brain knew this guy was banned from the US. Good, why the f would any org want someone working for them that hangs out with a literal terrorist dictator? Love Khamzat, but feels like a risky business to get him to be your champion if he's going to be banned from travel because he's friends with a war criminal. Khabib was filmed wrestling with Umar Nurmagomedov, showing that he still has some fight left in him and is still actively training. Top comments. Hill pulls out and Izzy steps in. 200k for Dern while 150k for Cejudo is wild to me. Ian Garry thinks he's a draw at 55k, lol. The thing is, UFC 300 isn't a bad card, it's just not equal to the hype Dana was giving it. If that thing about Merab going 15 minutes with Aljo in the locker room is true, even if it was a light sparring, and then the pace he pushed on Cejudo and after it in the interview, the guy was not even breathing hard. He actually looked like he could have gone another 2 rounds. Man, that's insane. Make sure to leave a comment and you might get featured in our next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss any MMA news. Check out our video from yesterday if you missed it. See you tomorrow.